Hey, this is Stuart Rorer with Auritas. I run alliances and marketing, and I'm here today with Deepak Sood. He's our CEO for another instance of Auritas Insights. And this is a follow up from Sapphire. So Deepak, maybe let me turn it to you for a second and have you highlight a couple of maybe the key takeaways from Sapphire 2026 this year.
Thank you, Stuart. I would say this was a big Sapphire event where SAP projected a lot of new innovations, starting with they presented their AI roadmap. They provided insights about how they are um, converging different business unit onto a single platform. Their BTP practice, BTM practice, and BDC practice being consolidated into business AI. Now, with that, I think it is going to make customers consume the applications and also looking into from different silos onto a single platform. It will make the adoption of these applications a lot more seamless. I also was intrigued by the messaging of SAP focusing about workflows, AI agents, and data. And the driver, I feel, when I look at how SAP is presenting that whole idea is that any business needs to run 24 by 7. And many times we find that there are human interventions required, but with agents coming into play, with automated workflows where you can secure certain kind of approval, you can have these processes running independently. I also found that there are some renewed focuses coming with the different acquisitions of Reltio and other platforms towards data. Since data is the core driver towards AI, I think there's going to be a renewed focus that is going to be coming towards data quality, data governance, and especially about handling not only the SAP's transactional and analytics data, but the outside data that is non-SAP, or for that matter, unstructured information, all aggregated together and getting, creative insights out of it.
I couldn't agree more, right? And I think, especially from the data quality standpoint, I think you nailed it, Deepak, right? I mean, look, we couldn't go through um, maybe three or four sentences at Sapphire this year without them talking about AI. And data quality
Mhm.
is the key part to AI. And as you mentioned, kind of consolidating, BTP and BDC and sort of those pieces. If you look at some of the structure, and then you talked about that the acquisitions, right? And if we talk about that for a second, one of the things that I think SAP is putting together, and it's a kind of a step process. If you think about how is SAP continuing to manage their transactional data quality, and that continues with SAP MDG, right, a historic product,
Mhm.
but they've planned to intertwine that into the business data cloud, right, into BDC. You also have third-party products, right, that run
Mhm.
on top of BTP. So think something like simple MDG. So you have mechanisms to maintain the SAP transactional data. I think that's critical. The second piece, and this was announced last year in the partnership with BDC, but a tool called Calibra, right? And one of the things that Calibra offers up and continues in this process and will be integral in this process, I think, is two or three major components, which is Calibra being used as a data dictionary. So how do I define what is revenue for a company? What is sales for a company?
Mhm.
How do I define regions, right? So there's a
Mhm.
lot of analytic components of what are the definitions from a business standpoint, and then also the key piece that from a data dictionary that Reltio or that Calibra plays is aligning what are the sources of that data, and then what is the confidence of the quality in that data, right? So if I think about where is that data coming from, and then is that a critical data set, I think that's what Calibra plays. Now you add in 2026 SAP's discussion point and addition of Reltio. And one of the things that Reltio will offer, and I think this is a key component that SAP, and I love this from an SAP perspective. I think SAP has realized everything does not revolve around SAP. They
Hmm.
recognize, I think they came to this, last year, maybe the year before, of hey, there's a lot of external data that's being stored in components like Google BigQuery and Databricks, and just kind of external sources. Customers don't control necessarily that data. They're getting it from third parties and it's storing in an external data warehouse. How do I marry that data together successfully with my managed SAP data? And this is where Reltio is going to be a huge addition. So think about being able to one, determine where are the sources for customer, for vendor, for material, right? And then how do I enhance that data? So from a third party data source, how might I get demographic data on some of my customers, or additional purchase information, or maybe I bring weather data in because that may be an influencer in some of my product manufacturing decisions. How do I then integrate that data together? That's where you use a tool like Reltio that's going to help take not only your SAP data, but also external data, pull that together, help you create golden records that are ultimately going to not only enhance the data, but then give you the ability to report and do analytics and specifically AI on a consolidated single sort of set of truth from these core assets, right? Again, think customer, vendor, material, kind of the data assets that you're actually looking for. So I think, again, a huge announcement from SAP.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. One more thing, when I look at the big picture, what SAP is suggesting is the adoption of AI is just not a very abrupt shift. They are making sure that they are keeping two things in mind. One, adoption should not be compromising data accuracy. So, even if you are adopting any functionalities, whether you're bringing AI, whether with another release of Claude being part of the Joule functions or Joule applications, or for that matter, you can pick any of the models. SAP is making sure that you are able to track all that information. You are able to see the details of how, even if you're using an AI platform, how did the AI platform made a decision to give you a particular outcome or a recommendation. The second piece in that area, as we look further, is they are also merging AI with current technologies. So I'll give you an example of process automation. So historically, if you look into an example of us processing invoices, we do a lot of procure to pay work. So in procure to pay arena, or for that matter, in any other technology where you're converting unstructured data into structured data, like you're scanning a PDF documents. What did we do historically? We would scan a document. We will OCR the document, meaning optical character recognition. We did build a knowledge base where we said, well, if there is a purchase order and it has 7 digits or it has a leading zero, well, knowledge base will automatically recognize the location and the structure of it and automatically map it to SAP. Now, on on the AI side, the newer technologies are coming, like VLM, where you can just see the content of an invoice, or for that matter, sales order, or any kind of content that is coming along. You are able to detect automatically. But we cannot necessarily just move towards VLM and ignore the fact that there are all these knowledge bases, rules, and all those things that are existing that makes the whole process really accurate. What SAP, and for that matter, SAP's partners like OpenText did was they blended the two technologies. And that resulted in not only a standard touchless success rate of 80% or more, but now they are able to get into high 90s using the merging of these two technologies. So this is where I see that the transformation is happening, but it is a way where you are leveraging the values of older technologies and you are adopting newer technologies with a lot of productivity coming along with that and a lot of accuracy.
Yeah, and again, just to add on to it, I think this is an extension, as I mentioned before, right? I think last year you saw in the BDC platform SAP extending out and doing some of the partnerships that they've done. I mentioned Calibra, I mentioned Google BigQuery and Databricks as great examples, right? Extending outside. I think Deepak, as you just mentioned, right? This year we've seen not only alignment through Claude, right? So just another example of SAP extending the platform, but not only kind of utilizing their own technology, right? The SAP embedded technology, but looking outside and sort of taking advantage of the enterprise from a customer and the data that's in that enterprise, and then utilizing that across the AI pieces. So again, kudos to SAP for the technology direction, right, and the innovation that they're doing in the AI space. I think we can, that was definitely a key piece that I think SAP wanted to highlight this year is
Yeah.
the work that they're doing and the extensions in AI. And so maybe just as a quick wrap up, right, things that Auritas might be looking at in 2026 to help support and align with SAP's direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna lead in with the fact that this Sapphire event also showed me that there is a lot of excitement with SAP customers. It was just not an event where I saw customers just absorbing information from SAP, presenting their innovations or new products, but customers were asking questions about how how can they adopt this technology, how they can start the different initiatives. So exciting times on that part. But coming back to your point, Stuart, our area of expertise to help customers prep their data from volume, from quality, from governance, and then us addressing the customers in the process automations phases, whether it is procure to pay, order to cash, and putting it all together with document management, content management, merging structured and unstructured information. We feel there is a lot of value that is going to be presented to SAP customers in these spaces. So really exciting times coming ahead.
Appreciate your feedback, and again, thanks everyone for listening in on this week's. Well, again, Deepak, thank you for your insight and your overview of Sapphire 2026. Appreciate everybody listening in on this episode of Auritas Insights, and look forward to connecting with you next time.
Thank you.